All right, we are now really ready to get started. This is Karen Billings, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Ed Division webinar. The topic today is part of our Ed Market 101 series, and it's about pricing your products and services for the school market. So for those of you who don't know about SIIA, we've got a large number of members, over 800, that are in different divisions, but the education division has about 180 of them, and we have a number of ways through committees and working groups that you could leverage your membership if you were to join, if you're not a member yet. We also have a couple of events coming up that we'd like to make sure you know about, particularly our Ed Business Forum in New York. It's December 10th and 11th. We're getting ready to announce the 10 finalists for the Innovation Incubator Program, and the registration deadline for early bird registration is for a savings of $200 tomorrow by the end of the day. So please, if you would like to attend and you haven't yet registered, please go to the email URL that's there, siia.net/EBF, and you'll find a way to register. We also have, for those of you on the West Coast, an easier to attend conference in San Francisco. Every May in San Francisco. It's a large conference, and that's where we have our Cody Awards. For those of you who don't know the education team, I've included names and our contact information here. You can see me as well as Lynn Derby today. She is usually managing the controls back here, and she's doing a great job making sure that everything is ready for you all today. Lindsay, I believe, is going to be on the call. She is on the call, and she's going to be listening and helping watch the chat box. And I don't think Mark is on, but I know that Jonathan is. And Jonathan is actually going to be writing up some of the highlights of this so that our members get a chance to learn what happened, even though they couldn't get to the webinar itself. We have a market survey that is extremely important. We do have the a pre-K-12 one that's for sale, and we also have one that is for higher ed. So if you go to our e-store, you can see the market reports that you could purchase, or you could very soon start to work with us to get us the information that we need for the 2013 school years. Our Cody Awards nominations were done, I think, in September, and we're still looking for a few judges. This year we're trying to even add more judges than normal. So if anybody knows of an educator or administrator that's practicing in an education institution, we'd love to have them judge the appropriate products that they have the skill set for. The Innovation Incubator Program, as we said, we'll be announcing the 10 finalists that will be speaking at the Ed Business Forum in New York. And then I think late January we plan to open up our next cycle, so that if you haven't applied before and would like to get your company and your innovation in front of a number of companies, potential investors, you just need to apply. It's very quick and easy. As I said, this is one of a series of our Ed Market 101 webinars, and we've had a few in terms of getting the product ready for the school market and finding out who the customers are and reaching them. And today is about pricing the products. You'll see some of the others that are coming up. We tend to host them every 2 weeks. And because some of us are going to be in London, we're going to actually try doing something live from there, and then 2 weeks later live from TCEA, and 2 weeks later or so live from South by Southwest. So it'll be an interesting set of webinars. They will go on as long as people have topics that they would like to talk about. And these are conversations. We don't ask people to prepare a number of slides and just provide you information. We also have today, I'll introduce the moderator in a second, but it's focused on the questions that we know people are asking. All of these webinars are going to be archived in some way, and we'll talk about that more at the end. So the first thing I'd like to do is to introduce Sue Collins, and she's going to be moderating today. She actually stepped in only a couple of hours ago because our first moderator had a medical emergency, and so she is here. And Sue is somebody that I've worked with when she was at Compaq, when she was at Apple, and Big Chuck, and a number of places. She's held a number of really great thought leadership in various organizations, and she's been a member for quite some time, whether it was while she was at Apple or other places. She has been on a number of working committees and working groups. She has also been chair of our Education Board of Directors, and she's currently helping sort of drive the efforts within our Education Board alumni group. So I could go on, but I think we want to give the time to others, and particularly to the discussion. So Sue, I'm going to let you take over.
Thank you very much, Karen. So actually, for all of those you out there who don't know me, that just means I'm old. And so I've had lots of chances to do wonderful things. And when Karen asked this morning whether I would help moderate this conversation between these two wonderful guys, I said certainly. So it's great to be here today. Good morning to everyone on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, and good lunch to you in the middle. So we're gonna start, and we would really like this to be as interactive as we can within the environment we have. So if you look down in the lower left-hand part of your screen, I think you're going to see a chat window. Mitch has already reached out to everyone there. Please be sure to ask questions, add comments. We will get to all of those. We have a framework for a really good discussion, but we want to make sure that this is very applicable to you and that the questions that you need answers get answered. So with that, I'm going to start by just asking our two speakers to introduce themselves and give a little bit of a background about who they are and what they're doing right now. So Michael, since you're in the middle of the screen right now, how about we start with you? So Michael Campbell.
Thanks, Sue. I'm Michael Campbell. I am the principal at Forward Thinking EDU. We are an advisory firm doing sales, marketing, and distribution for companies here in the U.S. and abroad. I've had a privilege of working in publishing and technology for the last 20 years with McGraw-Hill, Pearson, and Follett. Mitch?
Great. Thanks. So Mitch? Mitch, are you on mute? So I'm not sure if we've lost Mitch or not here for a second. So why don't we come back to Mitch's introduction in just a second, and let's go.
I'm actually, somebody muted me. But
well, there you go.
I unmuted myself.
Oh, good. Well, welcome back.
Okay.
It's always good to have one of the two speakers.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
But
so
I should
Mitch,
have.
a little about you?
Yeah, I should have kept quiet and let you talk about me. But anyhow, I'm a partner with Farima Sherman at Academic Business Advisors, and we work with K-12 and higher ed education publishers on both product and marketing. We look at ourselves as bridging the academic side with the business side. I also co-authored the SIIA Guide to the Post-Secondary Market. I write a blog, which you could access at our website, and I'm currently on the board of the SIIA Education Division and a nonprofit called Youth Rights Media.
Great, thanks, Mitch. So now that you know about us, why don't we find out a little bit about you? So this is a poll for all of you, and we'd like to know who your primary customer is. So we need you to pick one. So can you each kind of join in here real quickly? So we already have a bunch of votes, so keep going. Obviously, the district is far in the lead here. They're going to win by more than a nose, it looks like. Okay, great. So we have, I think, a pretty clear answer there that the primary customer for all of you who are on the phone is going to be the district. And so when we answer the questions, we'll tend to start talking about the district and what that means from pricing. So we're going to start with kind of a history question. Both Mitch and Michael have been around for quite a long time. I'm not saying that in any pejorative way, but you know, they know a lot about this. And so we're going to start with thinking back about how this whole pricing strategy has changed over time. So Mitch, if I could ask you to start first and just think back about 5 years ago. How were companies pricing their products, particularly those that had district products, and then talk to us a little bit about how you see that changing to now.
Okay, and I think I'd like to talk a little bit also about the poll itself and how important it is to understand who your buyer is, because let's say if I know a few of you answered that the buyer is a teacher, and a teacher might have a budget of under $200 to spend for the year. Somebody who's looking for a school-wide purchase, a principal might have the authority to spend $7,500 without going through any approvals, but they may also have the ability to go higher than that by getting approval from higher ups. Or for a district purchase, you may find that particular districts can purchase up to $20,000 without going through a competitive bidding process, but if you price your product greater than $20,000 for the district, you may have to go through an RFP process. So, that's really the prime reason why we put in the poll is for everybody is to stress that you have to understand the purchasing power of the person who's going to be your buyer. Just moving on to the specific question about 5 years ago. 5 years ago we were having a big debate about whether schools would pay for subscriptions or whether they would purchase something. A lot of schools were saying we can't pay for subscriptions, we only purchase. And today, that's really not true anymore. Schools are used to paying for subscriptions. And then another thing about 5 years ago is that was about the time of the recovery plan and the ARRA. And if you remember from back then, it was necessary for schools to pay for items in a year, even if they were using them for multiple years. So a lot of publishers constructed payment schemes where a 3-year or even a 5-year subscription was substantially paid for in the first year in order to take advantage of those funds. So those just a couple thoughts about 5 years ago. Michael, I know you have a different perspective probably.
No, I agree with that, and I'm glad you made the point about who your customer is, because I think that even 5 years ago, and in the companies that I work with now, we see this all the time, that the pricing has changed in the fact that as opposed to a district purchase, we're seeing a lot of school-based purchasing where that decision making has been pushed down into the district on that piece. On a content piece, 5 years ago we really saw most companies who deal with a lot of content with a one-to-one model. So, and now we're trying to, and now you see more and more companies looking at, because of the subscription piece, a one-to-many approach to pricing their products.
Okay, great. So, Mitch, anything about today that you think we should really refer to? I mean, one of the questions that came through on the chat window was something about, the difference between who buys and who uses and that intersection potentially. And can you, Mitch, start out by just talking a little bit about how you see that? It might be the buyer and the influencer, or how people might need to think about presenting the pricing based on who they're talking about. Does that make sense?
Sure. I think that in many products, especially in the non-administrative products, the person who's going to be using the system, the adult who's going to be using the system, is the teacher. And this goes to not just the pricing issue, but also the design issue also, because you design your product so that the teacher can effectively use it so that the students will learn. But if the purchaser is going to be an administrative person, then their concerns aren't just whether this is effective in the classroom, but whether it gives them the tools that they need. So in terms of pricing and in terms of the cost of developing it, that increases your cost of development because you have to integrate the results that you're accumulating with your software into whatever other systems that person or those administrators are using. And then just another thing is that teachers love free, but administrators and especially IT people hate free because free usually hides a lot of support problems. And so free is very often looked at as a way of getting into schools because teachers will look for free products, but free then creates problems when you go to and sell to administrators and to districts.
Okay, Michael, anything to add to that?
No, I think that I think you're going to see more and more people trying to push that pricing down all the way to parents. So when you see a per student pricing or a free model, they're really trying to get at a consumer that may be the parent outside of the classroom. So that'd be
that's actually a great lead into another question that we got from a listener here, and that is they're seeing competitors' price on a per teacher, per student, or sometimes per user model. Can you both go through what you might think of as the pros and cons for that kind of approach, a per pricing model? So, Michael, how about you first?
Yeah, I would even add, working with some of the folks that I've worked with in the past, that they do a per site model for school. So if a district has, 50 sites, then they're pricing that, and there's advantages to each of those. The per student, I think, is clearly, a model that's used quite a bit in the industry, especially with things like student information systems, those LMS, those solutions that are out there, and then I think that you have to look at how your pricing and your cost structure is based on that too. So, what's the advantage of doing that versus a district or a site pricing of that?
With that, why don't we go to this next poll and get some feedback about how.
Or Sue, could I just?
Mitch, do you want? Yeah, absolutely.
Can I comment on that also?
Yes, of course.
Because as Michael was talking, I was thinking he added a few other prices, and then there's another one which is the concurrent user price, which is how many users are on at any one time instead of just the total number of users. And I'm thinking, one of the aspects of the pricing strategy is what's going to be your discount strategy in order to encourage larger sales. If you're selling based on the number of students, then you're giving an advantage to a certain extent to schools that have lower students because your per school rate is going to be lower for them. If you then say, well, we're going to price per school, then to a certain extent you're giving an advantage to the schools that have the most students. I think most of the buyers today, no matter how you price, they're going to do the math and they're going to say, okay, here's my price per district, here's my price per school, here's my price per teacher, and here's my price per user. And different people are going to emphasize different ones of those. So if you can, if you have a flexible pricing mechanism and you can sit down with a buyer ahead of time and find out what their purchasing criteria are, the way you present the price is going to be very important.
Right. I actually just had that notion in my mind when I was thinking about whether or not we could discuss in some level of detail the relationship that you might see between a per user, per teacher, per building, per district price. Using a price like, let's say the price for a district is $1,000 for a product, right? What would a building price be relative to that? Can either of you address that question? Am I clear in the question? I guess
Sure.
is part of it,
Well,
right?
Yeah.
It's going to. I think it's going to be different by district, because if you say that a district price is, I forgot what you said, but let's say $10,000.
Right.
Well, you sell to New York City, that's a bargain. But you sell to a small district in,
Arkansas
some other,
or someplace.
Arkansas. I didn't want to
Right.
pick on any one state, but you sell to a small district, and that's an astronomical price. So they're going to do that math, and as you're coming up with the pricing, you have to be prepared of, okay, so in essence, what am I going to charge for a smaller district? What am I going to charge for a larger district? How much stress that's going to put on your system to make sure you cover your costs, cover your marketing costs, and have profit.
I also think that it's a strategy too. I think it's a strategy for a company to look at how much a district is paying for curriculum services per student too, and you may target only rural schools or only suburban schools, because as a company strategy that the pricing that you can get can be for those specific things. So I'm a huge advocate for segmenting the population, in our market, so that you're getting the pricing that's targeted directly to where you can actually, make money on the pricing that you chose.
And I think, Michael, you just brought up a great point in terms of targeting, because if you're not a huge company, then you should be looking at your product and saying, okay, my target market is going to be a district with these characteristics, and then you fit your pricing to that target market.
Exactly.
That was your point, just saying it a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, I think that that's exactly the point, right? It's about, particularly for a new or younger company that has smaller resources, to have the ability to say, okay, we're going after this market. This is the pricing that is most appealing or fairest to that particular segment of the market, is a great strategy, because it gets you kind of in the sense that people say, oh, they understand where we are, they understand what we're doing, what we have available. So I think that's great. So any other comments on that relationship between per user and per district site? I know that, Lee, let me just talk a little bit about the results of this poll, and then let's come back to your question, okay? So here's the results of the poll. So obviously the largest percentage of people here on this call are a subscription-based product. So there's a question that I have, and then I'll come back to Lee, and that is, when you're a subscription-based product or a subscription-based company, can you think about it in different ways? Can you think about it as being we're a 12-month subscription, we're a school year subscription, we are a monthly subscription? Michael, can you talk a little bit about the multiple kinds of subscription models you can have, multiple year, whatever comes to your mind as something that's effective for companies?
Yeah, well, most of my companies that I've been involved with have been with content on, from publishers for Follett, library. So those that, from my experience, have been all about, yearly subscriptions. And those have been very successful, especially if you can, again, if you have a product that's being used effectively in the classroom or in the library or in the school. And so that for me has been my experience, has been a yearly subscription. But you look at something like apps today that are being used, and within some of the apps are a monthly subscription to some solutions in there. So I think that it's a very different pricing model, a much lower, and it's also a per user basis as opposed to a large school or per student basis. But yeah, I think it's possible to use that. Mitch, in your experience from some of your clients and experience, have you seen something different other than a yearly subscription?
I think most of our customers are using a yearly subscription, although some have products that really only take a student maybe a month or 2 months to complete, in which case it's a shorter subscription. And then another thing to think about is when you're trying to attract a school, if it's, let's say, January, you may want to offer a lower cost for a half year to take the schools or new customers through the budget cycle. Or maybe you offer them, hey, if you sign up for a yearly subscription for next year, you get the rest of the school year free. So those are just options that you can throw in for the yearly subscription.
All right. So let's go back and answer just a couple of questions, because this seems to have triggered some things, some specific questions from our audience today. So let me go back to a question from Lee about could you describe the best pricing strategy for different targets? Both of you alluded to that a minute ago. Can you get a little more specific about that for a couple of minutes?
Michael, do you want to start?
Yeah, like I said, I think what has been successful, and again, it's just my opinion, is that for content basis, that subscription services have worked really well. For some of the more school services solutions, like an SIS, that's perpetual license, those kinds of things, have that pricing model has been more effective. Per student modeling pricing for that has been more effective. Mitch?
And we've seen, because it's a very open-ended question because it could be taken from many different standpoints. We've seen a lot of increasing demand for concurrent pricing, which is, again, not just the number of students who can use the product, but the maximum number who can be online at any one point. And that just seems to be something that's rising in popularity. But you could also take that question to mean, well, what about free, or what about freemium? I think that if you have a platform, then free could work really well, because there'll be other ways that you'll be getting payment. If you have a platform, you may charge other publishers for getting on your platform. Or if you have a platform, you may say, okay, well, this allows you access to the platform, but through this platform you can buy content, and so you make your money on the content. Something like that. I think those are other ways of pricing. In terms of looking at if you're targeting a large district versus a smaller district, I think a per user fee works really well when you're dealing with small districts or even medium-sized districts. But when you work with the really large districts, very often they're going to want to see a per school price or a per district price. And I'm sorry. It's
no,
Michael.
Go ahead, Michael.
What just occurred to me is that there is a good number of people who are thinking about other pricing strategies. So if you're targeting teachers, and so you might use a more of an advertising strategy where you're selling, the pricing is by the number of hits that you get from your site or something like that for more of an advertising type pricing strategy for your solution out there. Because I can think of 2 or 3 key solutions out there, and that's really how they're pricing it, is by the number, and I guess maybe that's more of the concurrent users there, Mitch, for that too.
Mm-hmm. And I also see the question about parent pay, and it's interesting. I haven't seen that be particularly successful in the U.S. For public schools. It's more successful that I've seen in private schools, and there are other countries where they just really expect the parents to pay. Germany, for example, the teacher recommends something or pretty much requires it, and the parents are expected to pay for it.
So let me just ask both of you, are you surprised at all about the responses to the survey that are on the, I think everyone should be able to see those right now? Does this look right to you? Right being obviously judgmental.
I was interested that I thought there might be some more free product, and I'm looking at freemium. That came as higher. I'd love to hear from the freemium companies to find out their success.
Right.
I go back to if you're primarily selling to principals and districts, in general they steer away. My experience has been they steer away from free and from freemium, and if you're selling to teachers, they love free and freemium. Well, they love free, and they're putting up with freemium. But then that tends to create a block when you try to move up the food chain and make larger sales into the district.
Right.
And I'd be interested to hear about what other models. It seems like a high number of people have clicked that other box what models they're using.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if the 5 people who had checked others, if they would be willing to share what their model was in the chat box, and we can kind of look at that. So.
And it could be the hybrid. I see Anthony.
Right.
Showalter has said that they're considering or selling free for teachers, but selling to districts. And there's a number of companies that are looking into doing that strategy where teachers can use it in the classroom, but if the district wants to get the data or other higher end services, they then pay.
Right.
And it's a relatively new way of pricing. And it hasn't been proven yet, but that's how you make the big bucks, is you do things that are new and then you succeed before others.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Is anyone else going to add to what they are doing for this? Or let's move to the free or freemium. Now, we didn't have a great example of a free product, but we do have a freemium, a number of people who use freemium. Michael and Mitch, can you talk a little bit about what you think of that model and how it can be successfully used? And then anybody who's on the call, if you are doing this and being successful and can talk a little bit about it, can you just do a little typing in that chat window? So, Michael, let's start with you on this one, okay?
Well, I look at a company like Moodle with their free model, and they have done if you look at their numbers that are out there, they've done a tremendous job of moving into the K-12 market with an LMS. But then I would ask them, what is their pricing? How are they making money? How are they monetizing it? So while they have gotten good uptake on the product, like Mitch said, teachers love free. Ultimately, how have they made money off of that? I personally don't have any great examples of a freemium strategy that has done well.
Mitch, can you add to that? Do you have a model?
Well, I think a lot of us are also looking at, say, Edmodo, which could be looked at as a freemium or a free strategy with some things that are paid for. And I know that coming up is going to be a question about what we think is going to happen over the next 5 years or 10 years. And I personally think that if you have a product that's primarily content which can be archived, then in order to be profitable, you're going to have to figure out some services that are going to differentiate you. Because I see the pricing for, and I'll call it static product, even though it could be a game or something like that. I see the pricing for that as having a lot of pressure and moving down over the future. So looking at how you can charge for installation, training, implementation, support, events, other things where you can add value, I think is going to be critical moving forward.
Great. So anybody who's doing premium and have a comment in the chat box? Yes. Oh, that's a question from Karen, so not that. So, but it does have to do it. This is from Karen, and we're going to go back and pick up a couple of the other questions in a minute. There's a couple of key questions I think we should get to before the end, but keep putting questions in there. We will come back to those, okay? But Karen, I think, has an interesting question that kind of tags on to what you just said, Mitch. She says, I have a question related to content-focused products, educational games specifically. What are your thoughts or feasibility of charging a fee for teacher support materials as well as the product itself? Or should these always be free? Should these be free always for a paid product, right?
So I think that yet again, if what you're offering is something that can be archived, could be put on a hard disk somewhere, somebody could access it, and even if they interact with it, but it's something that can be stored, you're going to have pricing pressure on that. But if it's going to be things like webinar training for teachers, maintaining a community of teachers so that the teachers can interact with you, having presenters who the teachers want to see, doing professional development, doing implementation, things like that, that's where in the future I think is going to be where you're likely to make your money. And I agree. It's just a question close enough.
Yeah, no,
I think it's that added value that goes along with that, and that's where you can make some money off of this model.
Right. Okay.
I thought that was a great question.
Good. Yeah, it is a great question. So thank you, Karen. Well, let me just follow on because it's so appropriate right now, which is, can you protect those archival materials that you were just speaking about, Mitch, with licenses or contracts, or really does it just not work?
So it's yes, you can protect them with licenses and contracts, but I think there's just going to be so much downward pressure for things that you could store that if a school is right now willing to pay $20 a student for, let's say, math lessons, in 6 years they're going to be looking to spend $7 per student for those math lessons, and a lot of that will be used for savings, and some of that will be used for things that are more live and that are more value added.
Okay. Michael, anything about that, or Mitch covered it pretty well?
No, I think Mitch covered it.
Okay. Then let me turn to you for this next question, okay? So I'm sure that many of the folks that are on the call are wondering about some big challenge that they're facing in pricing digital products. So what do you think is the most challenging aspect of doing that?
I think one of the big things that publishers and content people are trying to do is this one-to-one sale versus the one-to-many model. And I've seen some of the traditional publishers out there who really are put their hands up about trying to do the one-to-many model without it being just a pricing model that doesn't work for schools and for school libraries. So I really look at that being the key challenge, because and I understand that, because you want to have control over your intellectual property, and so I think that's that key challenge, is one-to-one versus one-to-many.
Okay, Mitch, how about you?
So it's interesting, because I think Michael hit it all out of the ballpark. There's two other things, one which has a relatively easy solution and one that doesn't have as much as a solution. The easier solution is, you have a new product and you're looking to price it, and you don't know if the dogs are going to eat the dog food. So you really don't know. So one way around that is to have an early adopter price, and so you're not locked into any pricing. You could just say, hey, this is for the early adopter community. We're doing it this way. We'll lock in your price, and then you could decide that's the right price. But if you decide that's not the right price, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. And
right.
the thing
so it's a test period, really.
Exactly. And an incentive, because you can say this is our price for the next 6 months. So it's kind of an incentive for people to sign up now. The thing
right.
that is possibly more problematic is that if you look at all the products that we sell into schools, generally our costs are greatest in the first year. And so what we'd love to do is to be able to charge more for the first year, because that's when we have to do the implementation and the training, and people are getting used to it. But on the other hand, the schools aren't seeing the value until after they've used the product for a while. So, and then on the third hand, not you necessarily have, most of us don't have three hands, but on the third hand is the fact that in the second or third year, the schools could be looking at the product and saying, well, wait a minute, I'm paying this amount. I can understand paying that in the first year where you did the training, but I want a reduction now because I don't need as much support. So I think that's just a difficult thing that companies have to cope with, is, hey, my costs are greater, but they don't see the value now. But if I charge to cover those costs, I'll get fewer customers now. But if I give it away now and come up with a lower price and I try to recoup it on the back end, then customers at that point are going to be saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't need you as much. I should get a reduction in price.
So in thinking about that, is it helpful or not helpful to separate the two prices? So the product price is the product price for, let's say, the 3 years of the contract, whatever that is, right? Or whatever the life of the renewal cycle might be. And pricing the implementation / support / professional development training separately, and so that the district is aware that they're going to pay more, but they actually understand what they're paying more for, and they then don't have as much concern for the second and third year.
That's a great question. Something, I'm going to let Michael get a chance to answer that first.
Well,
Michael.
in my experience, I think most contracts, they do lay a lot of that out in the final RFP and things like that. But what I find is a lot of districts in their quest to get the best deal start trying to nitpick you and say, well, we really don't want think we need the professional development that goes along with this.
Right.
And to me, I think that if you've designed a program to do that, that's what makes that program successful in a district or in a school, is because that's helping that culture change and to use your solution in the classroom or for the district. So I think that's a challenge, because I understand that schools want to get the best price there.
Right. So I mean, it's like in order to decrease the price, the customer is actually taking away their own tools to be successful using the product.
Yeah, it's like buying a car and saying, really, I don't really want a radio in the car, or I don't want, a steering wheel or something in the car, because I know that costs you. Yeah,
exactly.
So.
Or like my sister, who said, Oil, I never knew you had to put oil in the car. Now that's engine purpose. I don't understand that.
That's right. So let me just turn that question around just a little bit and just first of all ask you if either of you has an opinion about what's the most successful strategy for dealing with that conundrum of a larger price the first year to build in those what I would call success tools versus kind of including them in the cost of the product. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about, do you think about pricing differently if you're thinking about, Michael, today you've talked a lot about content and pricing content. Do we think about administrative or tool kinds of softwares like an LMS or some of those kinds of products? Do you think about them in a different pricing strategy? So
I
who
think
wants
you do.
to take that first? Michael does. Okay.
I think you do. I think you almost have to because, and I think, we're going to talk about this a little later, but I think that model of educational content is going to change tremendously in the next few years. So we are moving down to where instead of selling books, we're selling, individual pieces of that content for learning objects. So much like like we used to buy a whole CD or a whole, depending on your perspective, a whole album. And now we just buy the song we like, because and I think that's going to change how we price things. So, are you going to price one learning object at 99 cents versus a whole textbook at $49? So I do think that as the technology and as the needs change in the classroom and in schools, you're going to see that content, the way that we price content, change tremendously. We already are seeing more publishers saying, "Hey, listen, I'll just sell you the whole series of books or textbooks for one price." Even in higher education, you see that publishers are trying to, target universities and say, "We'll just sell you all of our business content for an X amount." So, as opposed to that one-on-one textbook price.
Right. So, Mitch, what about the administrative tool side? You do a lot of work with companies that have products like that. What do you think about how it's different than pricing the content products that Michael has just described?
Well, I think what a lot of companies are trying to do today, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, is turning their software like learning management systems or systems tools into platforms so that the schools pay nothing or very little, and they get their money out of the use of those, like either allowing the schools to buy other products using their product as a portal, or charging other publishers a fee for putting their products onto their system. And that's just it's relatively new in the last 3 or 4 years, and it'll be really interesting to see how that shakes out. And also, just in terms of thinking about pricing in general, I think one of the things that I'd encourage companies to do is, look at the schools and teachers who are using your products today and what's the most effective way that they're using the product, and then price it to encourage your customers to use the product that way. So if training is really necessary or some type of support is necessary, then price it so that you encourage your customers to actually do that.
All right. Okay. So we are down to like 9 minutes. So let me ask Mitch and Michael to at some point look over at the questions and see if there's something. I mean, Michael, thank you for just answering one. But let's go to sort of some really good takeaways for everyone on the call, which is what are the top 3 things people need to be thinking about when they price their products? So, Michael, how about you?
I think number one, you got to know your customer. And then number two, I think you got, think about, the the big picture of what you're trying to solve. Can you get more money in year one versus year three? So that strategy, those, and then short term versus long term really is what it is. And then I think ultimately, who, and again, it goes back to who you're targeting. Are you targeting the district? Are you targeting the school? Are you targeting teacher, parents, that kind of thing?
Okay. Mitch, do you have a quick list like that as well?
Well, I'd say that in general, it's to look at pricing and say, how do I use the pricing structure to maximize my sales, maximize the number of people using my product, maximize my impact, and maximize my revenue. And then within that, if I had to pick three things, it's, as Michael said, know your customer. Who's the decision maker and what's their spending authority? Two would be, how do you construct a pricing structure that encourages larger purchases or longer term purchases from your target market? And then three, understanding the spending streams or the funding streams that are going to pay for the product and service, and how do you create a flexible pricing structure to best accommodate all those different potential funding streams to make it easy for the buyer to buy you.
Great. That's really a great list of things to think about and sort of reiterated throughout this conversation. Let's do one more thing here, and then if we have some time, let's go through and answer some more questions, okay? So we started this out by talking a little bit about how things were priced 5 years ago. Can we just really quickly recap how we think pricing strategy is going to change over the next 5 years? And since Dick's not here today, I'm going to let Michael start first, okay?
A little bit. I do think that you're going to see more subscription pricing out there, and more pushing down the decision-making process from the district down into schools.
Okay. Mitch.
And I think there's going to be continued downward pressure on pricing, and that the profits are going to come from value add that you can build into your product. That when you want to build a product that you can scale, so it's got to be something that can be replicated at relatively low cost, school by school or user by user. But also there's got to be something that can't be replicated that you can charge more from, which makes it worthwhile paying a premium for your product and paying a premium for those services. And you have to think about it as those two components: what can be scaled easily and what can't be copied or scaled very easily, and how do I combine those to create something that's unique that I can charge a premium for.
Okay. That sounds great. So, Karen, let me just ask you if you need to have a few minutes for a wrap-up, or if we could go back and ask a question or two.
Oh, I think it's two things. We should go back and answer some of these questions if possible, and then, given the number of questions, we need to consider some kind of creative follow-up, or maybe even another Part 2 webinar to deal with these, because I think they are important.
And you may want, Karen, you may want to, if you put the questions together and send them and put them on even a Google document, and Sue, Michael, and I, and Dick, for that matter, could then edit the responses to those questions.
Yeah, and as I said, for members, we're going to be doing a lot of summarizing and follow-ups and sort of building a new, what we call, experts guide. So I think there are a lot of things to do.
And I see Nikki had the same suggestion. So great minds.
Yeah. Great idea.
And a smile to top it off, which is what more appropriate way to kind of think about wrapping this up? So let me go back and ask one question that I thought was very interesting that we really haven't talked at all about today. And this is a question that came from Joe a while ago, so sorry it's taken so long to get there. But this is about how schools handle bulk purchases of apps, which are typically sold on a per-user basis on the App Store or the Google Play. So what do you think that our customers think about that, and how do they actually, I know there's some functionality at both for large purchases. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? So Michael, let's start with you.
You know, I don't have a whole lot of experience with that. So, Mitch, do you have more experience with some apps that have been purchased on Google or on iTunes?
The companies that I've worked with who feel that they're most successful are generally doing a free or low-cost app where you then buy outside of the App Store add-ons to that then can be incorporated into the app, because the companies are feeling, hey, you know, we have to, you know, pay 25-30% to Apple, plus we need our salespeople to sell into the schools. So so the way they've gotten around that is they have a low cost of free app, and then the salespeople sell the content or whatever goes into the app, and that's done outside of the App Store. That has been the most successful strategy that we've seen.
And that has been the experience that I have had. So because of that exact reason, they did not want to pay that royalty to Google or to Apple.
And I think that the three of us would agree that that sort of future of apps and add-ons is really something we're going to see more of, not less of. Do you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. I think it becomes part, you know, how we used to do test banks and teachers' guides and things like that, and still do. I think the app becomes one of those supplementary items that
Right.
you put out there.
Right. So just for the person who had to jump in and kind of help out today, Michael and Mitch, you guys did a great job. Thank you so much. It looks like we have a lot of questions to go, so phase 2 might be coming, or some Google Doc answers, those kinds of things. But thank you both. You were just really terrifically helpful and I think on point in answering. So thank you for doing that. So
thank you.
Karen?
Yeah.
Yes?
Michael, I always learn a lot from you, and Sue, you're fantastic. I always learn from you.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Especially filling in, Mike, with an hour's notice. So thank you so much, and thank you both to Mitch and to Michael, who I think have great knowledge in this area, and it looks like there was a great fit between the kinds of things you know about and the kinds of questions that they all had. So don't forget to join us in a couple of weeks for the, I guess, you know, how do you get your products purchased by various funds? So it's like there are all these different kinds of pockets of money that people have. And then we're going to go into setting up sales channels and setting up selling mechanisms. And then spending marketing dollars, and the quote is, if you have any. So I'm sure that'll be a great one. Thank you all, and appreciate your attentiveness and your great questions. I think this webinar goes on record for the most number of questions so far in this series. So you have you have all of that to be thankful for, as we are nearing our Thanksgiving vacation soon.
Right.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.